So today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at our relationship with technology. We're going to see how it affects our lives. That's really it's a difficult issue. It's something that's going to be really hard. So we're going to be looking at technology and how it plays out. Now, let me just say, this message could be a series all by itself. This message, I could just load you with statistics, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at some statistics. You can go on right now and to our app or download our app, and you'll have all the statistics that I will go over today. We're going to give you all the information, expert information we're going to have. We're going to give you. But what we're doing is I've asked a couple of my staff to be a part of this conversation. And they all have some unique connection with technology. And I've kind of asked them to represent you in this dialogue moment that we're going to have. Now, let me just say something right off bat. We are not experts on technology. We are all users of technology just like you are. So we're in the middle of this. We love our devices. I mean, whenever the latest iPhone comes out, I've got that latest iPhone. It's kind of, I'm always on top of what technology is doing. We are not experts, but we have, through our app, connected you with some expert resources that you can use after today and begin to look at it. Do you know that 81% of Americans are on a smartphone? I mean, it was like 50% in 2012, but now it is here. It is part of our lives. And the question is, are we being enabled by our technology, or are we being disabled by our technology? And really, it's not the technology. It's our usage of the technology. None of us were born trained and ready for this. It's kind of like being a new parent. All of a sudden, we had technology kind of just served to us as a culture, as a planet, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. So I want you to know that technology is not the problem. So becoming an anti-technologist, if that's a thing, is really not the way to go. I mean, that's not what we're against. But rather, it's our commonality with technology that seems to be the emerging problem. We've treated the issue of technology kind of as a neutral zone. It's kind of gone under the wire on how to handle it. You know, I think it's one of the things that's occurred is that since technology has been received by the younger generation so quickly and kind of immersive into that technology, I think we as older people or as parents have decided that our kids know best with what to do with technology. We've kind of like decided, well, I don't even know what this newfangled thing does. My kid knows how to do it. And then whenever I ask them any questions about it, they look at me like I'm a blooming idiot. And so I think that's where a lot of us have gone, is that, we really have treated it as a neutral zone. We let it live around us, and it engages us. But technology is not neutral. And it's anything but neutral. It is designed to engage, to enable, and to entertain you at the fastest speeds. I mean, it's just designed to get you there and get you there fast. And then it's designed to get you there and to entertain you while you're there. And the daggum stuff is so sexy. I mean, I know that may sound crazy. I'm a technologist before going into ministry, 20 years career, did it in the military. I've been in computers all my life. But now when you hold that device in your hand and it's OLED screen and the way that it feels in your hand and how it operates and its speed and its presentation, it's designed to enable you, to almost intoxicate you with its capabilities. And so we can't leave it neutral because the device is not neutral. The technology is not neutral. So God wants us to, once again, approach this in an uncommon kind of way. Listen to Ephesians 5:15. He says, pay careful attention then to how you live. And we could put, parenthetically, we could put how you live with technology. Not as unwise people, but wise. Making the most of the time, and you could put even in technology. And he says, because the days are evil. Is that you can find yourself 2 or 3 clicks away from something that this is not going to be a porn conversation. This is going to be about ripping you off of some of the deep relational experiences that God wants you to have, that the days of evil. So don't be foolish. Be aware. This is not something we're just going to push off. But understand what the Lord's will is concerning technology. So we're going to move into this with everybody in mind. This is not a millennial problem. If you're like me and you're a baby boomer, you're 60 years of age or older, you'd think this is that newfangled kids, getting into all that stuff, and the kids have a problem with this. This is not a problem with this. And I will tell you this. I have seen more poor baby boomer usage of phones in conversations, in public, and in church than from any other generation. It's kind of like my generation is like, oh, look at the pictures of the little doggy, and then look at the grandbaby. And we just get intoxicated by it just like everybody else. So this is not some sort of generational thing that we're just pointing towards younger people. Also, this is not talking about porn. This is about the quality of life that we all want to experience with the people around us. Listen to this fact. 78% of parents believe they have a more complicated job in raising their kids today than previous generations, primarily because they have the added responsibility of monitoring their children's technology use. Most parents know it. It's like we got to get a hold of this thing. This is difficult. Here's another fact. This one will blow you away. This one comes from the teenagers. When polled, teenagers said that the number one thing they would change if they could, in their relationship with their parents, was for them as parents to spend less time on their phones and more time with them. Okay? Number one answer from teenagers was, hey, my parents can't talk to me about this because my parent has a problem with this. And I really wish my parent would get a hold of it so that I could have more relational time with them. So we need to set boundaries, and it needs to be for everyone. I really want you to realize this is for everyone. We'll talk in the context of family a lot, but you could transpose this into a corporation, into a church, or any relationship that you have. But we need to have boundaries. I need to have boundaries. Every single one of us need to have boundaries. God set boundaries, and he did this to protect life. Listen to Psalm 104. Verse 5, he said, God set the earth on its foundations so that it should never be moved. God covered it with the deep as with a garment, and the waters stood above the mountains. At your rebuke they fled. At the sound of your thunder they took flight. The mountains rose and the valleys sank down to the place that you appointed for them. You set a boundary that they may not pass, so that they might not again cover the earth. See, boundaries are good to make sure that relational life happens. And we need to make sure that we're not flooded out by technology. Because I think that's what that kind of allegorical language that's being used there kind of shows this idea of being flooded. And I think most of us are flooded with technology, and it's flooded into our families. So we're going to look at like 4 things that we can do to engage boundaries. And again, this will work at church, this will work with families. This could be a whole series, but we had to really just kind of reduce it down to this, talking about establishing boundaries. One of the first things is choosing character. That we've got to decide that we're going to choose character for our relationships. Jesus said this in Matthew 12:33. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for the tree is known by its fruit. I think the operative word in all that is the word make. Is making the decision and deciding that however we raise our children, however we do relationships, however we interact as a family, that we have to decide to choose character. That we're going to make this a good environment. We're going to make this a place that boundaries help us create something that flourishes, something that brings forth fruit. So it needs to be made the mission of our family, the mission of our relationships. But importantly, we need to model this for them. That matters so much. Moms and dads, if you're here, your kids are going to watch you use your phone. You know what's really crazy? My dog watches me use my phone. I don't know if you have one of these dogs, but I have a little Brittany, and when I'm sitting on the couch and I'm looking at my phone, she'll just come up right alongside of me, and then her paw will hit the phone, and then she'll hit the phone. I'm like, what the heck is you doing? It's like, and I'll tell you, if I put the phone down, she puts her head in my lap. I mean, yeah, it's a crazy, awesome dog. But here's the thing. This dog knows that this object in my hand is getting in the way of a relationship between me and her. So we need to model it. Here's the thing, we need to make hard choices. Because I know what I'm sending you home with. I know that I'm sending you home with a conflict. Because if you grab a hold of this, that you're going to have to go home, and husband and wife, you're going to have to talk to each other. And I hope you talk to each other before you talk to your kids. You know, you're going to have to talk to your kids. And your kid may be a 15-year-old girl. Good luck with that. They are the most powerful entities on the planet. Don't fool yourself. And nobody runs the world like a 15-year-old girl. But if you're going to go home and you're going to have this conversation, you're going to have to make a choice that we're going to have a character conversation. So we're going to have to get involved in observing what's going on. We're going to have to be willing to break some privacy barriers. Who came up with the idea that, Dad, you can't look at my phone? Who came up with that? The 15-year-old. Okay? Do you know that more than half of teenagers, when polled, asked if they would be rather willing to lose their phone or their car, chose that they would rather give up driving than lose their phone? You know why? You say, well, that's crazy. You can't go anywhere. It's like, oh, yes, they are going somewhere. Because that device can take you just about anywhere you want to go. So we've got to decide that we're going to have this tough conversation. So we're going to get into the issue of observation. So let's look at a couple apps. I've asked Brian to kind of help me with this. Brian is our children's pastor, and our youth pastor, so he knows much more than I do. And so he's going to explain a couple apps. These apps have been identified not by some Christian watch group, but by a technology group that I've been using for probably over 30 years on new technologies. It's a secular source. They are experts, and they have just identified a couple of the apps that are being used right now that they wouldn't even let their kids have on their phone. And these guys, these are not God followers. These are just people who are in technology that look at the vulnerability of these programs, that open up everybody, not just kids, but everybody, to stuff that we probably don't need to go into as a culture. So Brian, tell me a little about, it's called Yubo?
Yubo.
Okay,
Yubo?
please. You'll have to excuse me. And this is what we want you to see, that we're stepping into this for the first time. But the eternal principles of God can apply to anything that's invented in life. And we're just showing you how, okay, we are going to meld these ideas from God into our lives. So tell me about Tinder and that other one. Yobo.
Yubo and Tinder, they're the typical swipe to either accept meetups with somebody. It uses geofencing, which is it basically sees who's around you and sends you a matchup with you, and you say, yeah, I want to meet up with this random person, or no, I don't want to meet this random person. So that's what they're generally intended for. It's a dating type of app. It's one that no high schooler should have on their phone.
Okay, and so. I'm going to use a phrase. Please offend me if I use this, but it's the phrase. It's generally used as a hookup app.
Yes, generally it is a hookup app.
Okay,
yes.
And if you don't know what that means, do not Google it while you're here. Okay, just do that at home. I don't want to hear any shrieking going on. But so basically that program, if you've got a lot of people that are using it, and also it has imagery involved in it, so that if you walked into a church like this, it would tell you, anybody using that app, that they're in this location, then show you their picture, in whatever form that picture is, you could swipe through and then decide that you're going to kind of tap that person on the shoulder through the app.
Sure.
And so, okay, yeah, we're getting into a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see the problem with that one. We got Holla out there, which it's kind of like a random chat thing.
Yeah, it's a random chat. It's like a chat roulette type of wheel thing, and you holla at somebody through it when it pulls up a random person.
Okay.
So it can be anything that pops up,
Okay.
basically.
Blender's kind of like Tinder.
Blender
in a
is
way.
Blender is just like Tinder and Yubo. Yeah.
And now
So.
the Whisper, this one really fascinated me. Tell us about Whisper.
Whisper, it's an app that was created as like an anonymous confession type of app.
Yeah.
So it's where people would go on it and confess something that they did anonymously, so nobody really knows, but it's like getting it off your chest. And a lot of middle school aged people have started getting onto it and confessing things, which draws them into conversations with people to, basically generate a relationship that should not be there.
Right. Okay. And let's be, when we use the word confession in church, we're not talking about that they're confessing things that they need prayer for. They're confessing what they have and have not, predominantly sexual experience.
Yeah, things that generate an exciting story to talk about with somebody else.
Yeah, it's a different form of voyeurism through confession.
Right.
I mean, there's been TV shows made about that. Okay, we've got After School and Kick. Tell us about those ones.
Kick is it was created as a alternative texting or instant messaging type of app, but it turned into something because it's entirely unmonitored. There are no age restriction monitoring or anything like that on it, and it got picked up in the United States heavily by teens, and so it's just basically a breeding ground for predators.
Yeah.
And like you can't find out whether or not somebody is of your age or not of your age, and so most
Wow.
parents just think it's just you're just messaging your friends kind of
Yeah.
thing, but that's not all it is. So.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about this one, so we talked about this, is that these are the biggest apps that are out there right now. Your teenager may have said, well, we don't do that one anymore. They're constantly cycling over. They're being renamed, re-engineered, and put back under new names. But, you think, wow, this Kick program, so dangerous. Do you know that this organization is run by 19 people? 19 people. Just, I'm willing to bet those 19 people are probably funded by some baby boomer like me. And it's probably about, 18 of the other ones are probably about 25 years of age. And they are deciding what your young people and what we're going to interface with. It's not like this is Google or Microsoft, a giant, or, the nation of China trying to get us. This is a little corporation of 19 people have created an enticing little app that is put on our phones and that just leads us into a bad place or makes us vulnerable. I love this one. This one is devilish. Tell me about Hide It Pro.
So Hide It Pro is basically an app that makes your apps on your phone look like junk stuff. So like the settings app or something like that. But really, when you go into it, it's a folder that contains apps that you don't want your parents to see, kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
So, or your wife or your husband or,
Exactly. So, and this is free. From on Android or Apple, you can download it so that, parents are flipping through. It's like, oh, that's the calculator app. No, it's not the calculator app. It's just a fake icon to make you just pass over it so that you don't realize that something else is there. And then this is one of the big ones, Snapchat. Tell us a little bit about Snapchat.
So Snapchat's dangerous because of its original intention. You would send a photo and it would disappear after 10 seconds. So kids felt safe, like they could send whatever they wanted and it would disappear after 10 seconds. But nothing disappears, though.
Yeah, so just figure out what you would want to disappear after 10 seconds. It's not you can understand how this app would be used. I know you're saying, well, my little girl is never going to do that. Well, you know what? Maybe she's not, but maybe the friend of a friend who decides to send a picture or a snap to them, all of a sudden, you've got something on the phone, and then it disappears. So, parent, you're totally in the dark. And if your young person is like, well, I don't use it that way, well, then tell them to use Messenger. Everything comes with it. Well, people don't message anymore. Okay, you know. See, this is where you need to get involved. There's no reason why in the world, and I'm going to say this, there's no reason why in the world a 60-year-old man should have Snapchat on his phone. Okay? What was that, a 60-year-old woman? Leave your man alone. I'm talking to him right now. He's a big boy. Okay, so these are some really things that, hey, we gotta get involved in it. But let me be clear. If the ESPN app or the Pottery Barn app or the NFL fantasy football app is affecting your God culture and taking your time away from your kids, it needs to go. You know, so we're not saying that technology is evil or any one particular app, though there are some that are designed for, you know, this kind of behavior.
Yeah, these apps in particular were intended to foster that anxiety in people, or create a sense of cultural belonging, but not the belonging that we know is right. So that's the main problem with these apps. Is it really does generate those things in people and kids, and we see that all the time in youth groups.
Wow. Okay, so let's take, we talked about choosing character. Then we're going to talk about shape the space that you live in. Make choices about the place that you live and about where you do life, and like how your house is arranged, how your workplace is arranged, how you use technology at a staff meeting or when you're with your family. Listen to Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. So God begins this process of separating darkness from light, and he begins to put things in its places. Otherwise, it was just void and without form. Now, the stuff may have already been there, but God begins the process of defining the spaces, and then he produces the rest of the story. It is good, it is good, it is good. Your family space, your workspace, your relationship spaces with technology will not have any clear definition unless you begin to separate light from darkness. You begin to establish habits of how technology is going to be used in the spaces that you live in. God separated spaces to make them more livable, to make them flourish. We're going to have to do this with technology. So Stacy is in a really tough place. She is the mom of teenagers. And I've kind of asked her to represent that dilemma. I can have an opinion all day long, but my kids are all grown and have to make their own choices. But what are some of the challenges of putting tech in the right place at home?
I mean, we definitely face challenges in our home on a daily basis, almost dealing with technology, because there isn't a right place. Right now, where we are as a household, there are some things that we're going to start implementing, because I've realized over the last several months especially that the problem that we're running into with technology is we're disconnected from each other. Our family disconnects, like we're only half listening because we have a phone in front of us. And I'm not talking about my children, I'm talking about myself and my husband, that we're the ones doing that. When you were reading those statistics talking about how children want their parents to put their phones down, it's really convicting to me as a mom. And then it leads me into thinking about how terrible I am, and it's just overwhelming, and I get overwhelmed. And so the conversation has started with Chris and I on how we can better reconnect to one another and model this, because I think one of the biggest things we've seen is that my kids model the behavior that I have, whether it's in the home or in the car. For us, about a year and a half ago, I was teaching my daughter how to drive. And so as we're riding, I'm like, you have to sit in the front seat, you have to watch what I'm doing, you have to pay attention, because I'm going to talk you through how to drive. But one of the things that I realized that came up was I was texting and driving. And so I would say to her, don't ever text and drive, and I'm driving, and because my habit is pick my phone up and look at it while I'm driving, I would
Yeah.
look at it, and it was really convicting. And so I had a conversation with her and said, you know what, Emma, you have permission to hold me accountable to this, because I'm telling you that you can't do this, but I'm doing it. And so when
Right.
you're sitting here and you see me do it, you have permission to say, hey, Mom, you asked me to hold you accountable. But it was causing issues, because then I was like, who are you? You can't tell me what to do. And I'm like, no, you should. You should. This is a
Yeah.
place where I want to have this conversation. So
Well, I tell you, texting and driving is something I struggle with, because now if you could, as cars are development, you can get that lane assist thing where it bumps you in back into the lane again if you got a car like that, or you can get one of those ones that will automatically stop you before you have a collision. What is that? That's better texting. Okay, that means my car can drive itself better, so I won't get in an accident, so that I can be checking my fantasy football team, and I'll be actually editing my lineup with my phone while I'm driving. See, I mean, every one of us, we can say this is the 15-year-old girl. This is not. It's every single one of us. Let me ask you, when you have this conversation with maybe your daughter, let's take her for instance, a lot of clashes with that?
oh, absolutely. Just last week we were talking about Snapchat, actually, and it caused a lot of conflict, and it's not easy. And our tendency is, well, let's just not talk about it and just give in, because I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm trying to keep up with so many other things as a mom.
Yeah.
And so I get worn out. I mean, that's one of the biggest things. And then the conflict, I don't want to engage the conflict, but it absolutely causes conflicts, because they get mad at me. I mean, even my 12-year-old gets mad when I'm like, no, you can't be on your device right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, so it takes courage to do what we're
Yes.
talking. And then also the problem is they may have more technical knowledge about the device. So what? You know?
Yeah,
I mean, really, so
absolutely. I
what?
mean, it is. It's intimidating. I like to know what I'm talking about. And with technology, there are things that I don't understand, that I don't know. And so one of the other things is find resources, find people who know
Yeah.
more. That's why I come in and I talk to Ricky. I'm like, hey, Ricky, help me with this. Tell me what this means.
You guys have kind of incorporated this idea that's getting popular called a parking spot.
Yes.
So tell me, what's a parking spot?
So just like when you get home, there's a spot where you park. I don't know if you guys are like us, but when we get in, every single one of us has a specific parking spot at my house. And so we park our car there and we come in. And so the idea is the same when we come in our house, that we will park our technology, our devices, our phones will get parked in a parking spot. And so that works really well for mobile devices. You can have one general area where things get charged, and we know when we come in, we park that so that we can engage each other. And it is going to cause conflict in our house, and it's going to cause some disruption, and we're going to have to make some adjustments with it. But I mean, that's one of the things that's really helpful for us.
I heard one set of parents, what they did was they allowed no other chargers in the phone except for the chargers in the parking spot. So that was the only place where a device would get charged, is in the charger. You could not take that device to the bedroom and then leave it plugged in all night, getting text messages over and over again while you're trying to get sleep. So take a look around your home and find out where life happens mostly in your home, and then find out how technology is being used in that. We all got living rooms, we got little kitchen places that we can be, but look where life happens and see if technology is someplace where it doesn't belong, where it shouldn't be involved. Let's take the dinner table. Okay, I got some statistics here. About 32% of parents say that devices are not allowed at the table. 32%. I was kind of hoping that number was going to be a little bit larger, but only 32%. 22% say family members rarely bring their devices to the table, and 19% say their family members always bring their devices to the table. Now, you may add up those numbers and say, well, that doesn't add up to 100%. The other percent is not even having a conversation about it, meaning that we're not even talking about how to regulate devices in our lives. So this is a really important thing is, if you can't ask your 15-year-old or your 60-year-old in your life to say, listen, we're going to have a dinner together, can we put the technology down? You say, yeah, but they're on call. Okay, can we, I'm a pretty important person. I think I'm semi-important, people die, people have issues, but, I don't think I have to give up a 30-minute or 45-minute moment with my wife or my children because I'm on call. I mean, if you're a specialist, if you've got a spaceship in space right now and you're trying to land it in the next half hour on the moon, I get it. Maybe it's not a good time for you to have dinner. If you're a surgeon and somebody's waiting for you at the hospital, I get it. But for the most of us, let's be honest. We need to be able to say that there are some times when the family comes together. So if you get pushback on this, just know this. Oh, my goodness. We do have a problem. We really do have to decide about what we're going to do in the future. So let's talk about the next thing. So we talked about choosing character. We talked about creating space. And now we're going to talk about structure time. Building rhythm into your life, daily, weekly, and even yearly. And these rhythms are so important. God created seasons. He created this thing called Sabbath, this idea of taking a rest. Do you know that only 1 in 7 adults, that's 14% of adults, set aside a day of rest? Only 14% of us actually kind of chill out. Now, it was funny, out of that 14%, I could have shown you more numbers, that like 50% did other kind of work than the work that they get paid for. So out of that 14%, they weren't just chilling and relaxing or recuperating. Even fewer Americans commit to a daily time of being alone, only 16%. Spending time with God, only 21%. Or activities that recharge them, only 12%. We are wore out. And what we're filling the gap with is with Facebook. It's Candy Crush. If you can Google that one, you should get a pretty good safe result from that one. We're just filling our time with technology, with Instagram and some of the other things that are out there. So I wanted to, somebody who's really in this now is Ricky, talking about establishing time limits, because you have a big challenge. He's got 2 boys, and one is 4, and the other one is 2. Okay, so just imagine the Taylor household. You got a 4-year-old boy and a 2-year-old boy. What are some of your technology challenges?
I think it's mostly, especially like in these Saturdays and Sundays, I love football. I love Clemson football. I love Panthers football. Please, nobody tell me anything about the game right now. But there's a convenience factor that is really easy. And I looked at it yesterday. I was sitting there watching the Clemson game, and the time that Alice was on the tablet, which is my 4-year-old, the most was during that game. It's because it's easier for me just to, hey, he's going to leave me alone if he's got that, and I can just focus on this. So it's a convenience thing. It's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me just say it. I'm going to confess for an older family. We might not have been doing any better. Like if we went out to a restaurant and our kids were, they were throwing stuff at the people at the other table, getting up and walking around. I mean, it was a colossal mess. It wasn't like, well, when we were your parents, we. What we used to do is we used to leave the restaurant. For 2 years of our lives, we could not go in public with our children because Deanna was just so crazy. We just decided, we're just not meeting with people for the next 2 to 5 years of our lives. But can you imagine, if you're my age, can you imagine how much easier it would be just to slip one of your old iPads or your old iPhone 5 or 4, and it's got a little game on it and maybe some access to YouTube Kids or something like that, and then you can just have a conversation with mom while you're at the table and they can be busy, So how do you regulate something like that?
Well, a lot of times we use it for a purpose. So there'll be times when there is something that I need to get done, such as dinner or things like that. There will be a purpose, but there is a limit set for how long we operate that. And there's lots of ways. I have Apple products, so there's what's called screen time and downtime, and there's ways I control that as a parent that my boys can't mess with and change. So when that app is done, it's done. I can even set it for my watch sometimes to tell me, this app is done now. And usually you'll hear it in the other room when it finishes because there'll be some type of uproar. And that's usually.
Yeah, and you know what? We just can't cower down on that.
Yeah.
And if we create, this is electronic time, and this is reading time, and this is outdoor time, I think it may help with some of that tantrum thing if they know that there's boundaries already established. Now, Ricky Kelly works in the behavioral science, particularly with children, and so she's really up on some of the things that young kids are facing. And there's one thing, kind of phenomenon, it's real, that is happening to children, and it's also working its way into adults.
Yeah, it's called FOMO. You may have heard the
FOMO.
abbreviation. FOMO, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Like right now, I've got it right now because we're probably in the second quarter, third quarter. I got Christian McCaffrey on my fantasy team, which is the Panthers running back,
Yeah.
and we're playing, and we haven't lost in a month. So I'm like, it's basically an anxiety that comes up where something is more exciting somewhere else,
Yeah.
mainly this device. For how it pertains to me right now, but it could be anything. But mostly we're seeing it come with social networking and devices. It's just an exciting thing happening somewhere else that I feel like I'm missing out on, so I need to go get it right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you where I've experienced FOMO. It's just even funny just saying it out loud. But it's Facebook. Like, I'll post something on Facebook. I know you're going to say, well, you're a 15-year-old girl. But I'll post something on Facebook. And if I was, I'd be proud of that. But I'll post something on Facebook, and then about 5 minutes later, I'll see if anybody liked it, you know? And then if I'm expecting, are you guys laughing at me over here? Yes. I'll look at somebody, and then if somebody loved it, I'll actually find out who loved it. Oh, I like them so much. They've always been my best friends, you know? And then I'll check it, like, in the middle of the day. I'm like, then if I don't get enough likes, I'll be like, I got a bunch of morons on my Facebook page. And then I'll go over, and Deanna can post the exact same photo that I took and posted on her Facebook, and then she's got 300 likes. And then I'm insulted that it's me now they don't want to interact with. You say, well, that's crazy. No, it's what technology does. You know, it's constantly, I'm with Ricky, I'm always checking, you know, when my phone, I'll be in a counseling meeting, and all of a sudden you'll hear dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. That means some waiver wire trade just occurred in the NFL, and I was being notified by my fantasy football app that I need to change my lineup. And I'll be like, I'm sorry, I know your marriage is falling apart. If you give me a second here. It's like, you think your life is falling apart. Christian McCaffrey just twisted his ankle, you know. This is real, though. We've kind of created this expectation out of technology. We've also given you links on Facebook that you can go to help you use your iPhone or your Android device to set up time limits for children. Let me just read these quickly to you. When it comes to putting down a device, only 12% of adults say they intentionally set aside their phone during the day. Only 12% will take the phone and put it someplace else. 60% of adults say they never take a break from social media. So this is why we need to get off our kids' back. 60% of adults don't get off of social media, and they're probably getting paid during that time too. Only 1 in 5 say they take a break for a little while. 45% of teens say that they are almost constantly online. 65% of all teens say when they don't have their phone, it produces anxiety in them. Okay? Samsung didn't do this to us. Apple didn't do it to us. LG did not do this to us. We just allowed a neutral zone where we just didn't think we needed to apply God principles. And it's gotten away from us. We need to realize we're at addictive levels with the distraction of technology. Every single one of us who own one of these devices. I love what Brian, he had a perspective on Ephesians 5:18. Let me read it to you. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine. And just kind of focus on that, because we've always focused on that as Christians. Do not be drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. Brian, how did that connect with you with technology?
Yeah, I think we get stuck on the wine part of it, but I want to challenge. I think it really is about the second part, and it's the debauchery part that it produces in us. And so it's the consumption of something that produces this ill-advised decision-making process in us. And so being addicted to consuming media or social media stuff or things on our phone is producing a poor decision making process out of us with the relationships with people around us constantly.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Bible Belters, we focused on alcohol. Oh, God's anti-alcohol. No, he's saying that was the issue for them. They didn't have a smartphone. But what he was saying was like, be careful of anything that distracts you or removes you from a place of sound mind, Paul says in another place. And I kind of like twist that around a little bit. Sound mind, meaning that your mind no longer hears sounds. And have you ever been in your house when you're no longer hearing the sounds of conversation between you and your kids? You know, your kids are in a room and they're playing their devices and there's no longer the minding of sound where conversations take place, where people are minding what's going on around them. So this is something that we need to really focus on. We wouldn't want anybody walking around our houses drunk because of their impact on the family. But the Apostle Paul is really kind of telling us to be wise about this, because that same sound-mindedness gets lost when we lose our minds in the sounds of our technology. So, the last thing is establishing living boundaries. It's time for us to do it. We need to decide where devices can be used. At work, at home, our staff meeting. I've asked everybody at our staff meetings, do not look at your phone. I don't care what it is. Let's close the hoods down on our laptops. And when it's time for conversation, then we need to have conversation and not be distracted. We need to decide which social media platforms our kids are going to. We need to decide there's no reason why, and I'm speaking for a 60-year-old man, there's no reason why a 60-year-old man needs to be up in front of a computer at 2 o'clock at night. I can't sleep? Okay, we'll do something else. You know, play Candy Crush or do something else. But we really need to establish boundaries. We need to decide what environments technology can be used in at work and at home. And then we also need to decide who's old enough or responsible enough to handle this issue of technology. Right now, we've left it up to what does culture say. Well, you know, all the kids at school that are, you know, they're 8 and 12 years old, they all have smartphones. That just, you know, I don't want my kid to feel out. So we need to realize what's driving how we're making decisions. And last of all, I want you to consider avoiding all or nothing perfectionism. It would be easy to walk out of here and say, well, I've heard enough. There's no technology in our house. Technology is here to stay. Technology is not the problem. It's us clarifying the issue of character at home. It's about us deciding what are the sacred spaces where family and conversation happen. What about setting time for it and making time for family or making time for relationships? So as we close out today's service in this moment of expressions, I think all of us, and this is not just the youth in the room, it's not just the moms in the room, I think we need to ask God to give us wisdom. I think we're at a pivotal point in our society, but I can't control what everybody does. But I think we're at a pivotal point for us as families, as husbands and wives, and even people who have relationships. I think we've got to ask ourselves, God, give me wisdom to see the needs of my relationship. A lot of you were stunned when I told you that the number one request of a teenager was that their parent would spend less time on the phone. I think you want to have a relationship with your kids. You didn't think that your usage of technology was the problem. We need God to show us where maybe this has gotten out of control in our lives. We need to ask God to help us to create spaces where life flourishes. We need to ask God to give us courage. Because for some of you, you're going to have to back out of a situation that you've already created. And you know, this would be the time where you have a really good heart-to-heart conversation, and one that is very humble with your kids. Hey, we've gotten to a place where daddy, mom, probably we shouldn't have gotten here, or I didn't know where we had gotten to. So it'll be a time where you're going to have a hard conversation. And then ask God, help me to protect my relationship with you. For me, technology, because it's mostly me and my wife at the house, it's now technology comes between me and God. Am I going to take it on my prayer walk? When I'm sitting and I'm just watching the birds, do I got to have it in my hands? Do I got to carry it everywhere I go? When I get into the car, can I just leave it off? Or do I always have to pair up my Bluetooth and make sure I can hear some blog or something being this is not a porn conversation. This is a distraction of our soul conversation, or missing the other souls that are around us. Father, as we enter into this moment of communion with you, it's a time when we reconnect. We tell our souls to reconnect with you. It's a time that we've set up, we've established a boundary, that we come and receive the bread and the cup and we remember what you've done for us. But God, help us take this kind of communion home with us. A time when we put everything else aside and we break bread with one another. Let this be a time, Lord God, where we think about, does our family have character? Have we created spaces of flourishing? Do I really have time for the loved ones around me? And do I, Lord God, do I have the courage to establish boundaries? Let me encourage you to ask the Holy Spirit to fill you. And you may be here today and your kids have already zoomed out, or your influence with your 17-year-old is really diminished, and you feel guilty about it. This is something that's caught all of us. God doesn't want anybody to leave here ashamed. He wants you to leave here proactively empowered by his wisdom and his grace. Father, fill us, Lord God. Fill us with your presence. Fill us with your wisdom. Fill us with your courage.